appeared and miscegenated on into what you call the Arab race now. But you know, we understand about your Nubians, but I'm going to show you the same headdress in the 1800s. Right here, if you can zoom in, there is a picture of a black woman with wide, big lips and a wide nose, which is the same figure of supposed to be on the outside of the temple. This is on the inside of Dendera, drawn by David Roberts around in the late 1800s. As a matter of fact, we would say that this was actually, I think this was actually in Nubia 1846 that he drew this particular part that went on. So now, let's go on. Now, the next thing we want to deal with is I want to show you a color picture of what the temples used to look like on the inside of Dendera. Or on the inside, I'm going to show you one from the temple of Isis at Philae, and I'm going to show you one that in actuality, well, it's a color picture, but this one is not at Dendera. Now, I showed you the columns, right? Now, we know that the columns are black, so you don't need to trip when I show you European pictures. We know that the Europeans was not doing things for us, right? This is a picture of the column. If you look at the column, you'll see that every piece of the column was painted. You understand? Every part of the columns were painted. And this is the column at Dendera. Now, let's go on. I also want to show you a real picture, color picture, of the inside of the temples. This is a color picture, and as you can see, I want you to zoom in on this. And as you can see, every particular piece of the temple was painted. Background was white, and the meta on it was all colored. So even though the outside of these temples that they drew this way, they didn't have time to color them in, but this is how the outside looked also too. Show you another representation of a colored temple. This temple is the colored from the with full color of the temple of Isis at Philae, which was the last temple that they closed. And right after they closed this temple, Europe went into a dark age. And this is also the color of the temple. This down here and also up here, you saw the different things. Every part was colored, even though they got a little bit of pinkish looking people on there. We know the deal. You understand that? Did you get it?
They can lean those to us, have the top to lean towards us, and it takes the glare off.
Okay. That's the color. That's the color. I want to get that shot in there. All right. Let's go on. Now we're going to deal with the famous temple of Karnak, which is called a Pedaisu, or as Dr. Ben called it, Warit. What Dr. Ben calls it, Warit. Before we go on this, like I said, this is another color picture of Dendera before the color fell off. Now, this has got to be the best painting in the world because the French didn't even get there till the late 17th century, late 1800s, early 19th century. You understand what I'm saying? And late 1700s, early 1800s, which is the 19th century. And this paint was still on there from 2,000, some of them 3,000 years old. Check. Let you know that not only were they the best artists in the world, they said they would have 3 men working on one arm of a big statue at one time. You see. 3, 4, 5 men, and they would get it done like that. Interesting. Let me explain one thing right quick before it gets off my mind on how some of these temples were built. Let me explain this right quick. Let me show you what they used to do. They used to take a temple, and what they would do is they would build the bottom part. Then they would put sand right here. Then they would stand on the sand and they'd build the next part. Put sand there, stand on the other part, put sand there until they build it all the way to the top. They would go in where these particular columns, build the bottom part, sculpture it, put the sand, and they could build a wall. They could just stack stuff on it, and then they would clean the temple out. This was one of the methods of building the actual temples. They would fill them up. Each when they wanted to go up certain levels, they would fill the actual thing up on sand because they didn't need to deal with scaffolds as much for the simple fact that they had to have detailed art. And you could read these temples like books, and it's written in the stone, and most Christians can't get around that. We could take them right back and show them the origins of the Bible, the Quran, and anyone right in the stone. Now, be sure to note that every temple that I'm showing you is, even though some of this stuff dates back 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years, it's still late stuff. You see. Remember now, we didn't need temples when we were as on the same level as what we were when we was in Atlantis and Lemuria, because our Akashic records was open in our mind. And we had cosmic memory, universal consciousness, the Christ consciousness, and cosmic consciousness. We only needed to build the temples as libraries and different things like that so we can read them as storybooks when our third eye and spiritual chakra system shut down based on this third dimension. And the vibratory rate of the earth fell. So therefore, in order to obtain this cosmic consciousness, you had to go to the mystery system in Egypt, which preserved the science of the Akashic records, which was used to be in your mind, but you're getting ready to go back to this now in the later days where you won't even need this stuff. It'll be in your mind. Check. All right. Everybody's Akashic records. I want to deal with one other thing with the Temple of Dendera. From the ceiling of Dendera, the temple is dedicated to Hathor Heru, the Virgin Mother. This is the zodiac. It's probably called the planisphere. It's called, instead of a zodiac, it's called a planisphere. That manifests the intimate connection with the past of the celestial taken by the departed, the holy dead in the interest of light. Now, we also have a breakdown of that particular temple of Dendera, which you have the star Sirius. This is also called, the key to that is the star Sirius that's called the primordial star of all times. And a lot of that stuff is coming from Mariette's book on Dendera. There's a particular person that wrote an 18th century Egyptologist wrote a book. His name was Mariette. It's an out-of-print book on Dendera, and he did most of the work on Dendera, which we had, which is key because that zodiac is very, very key at this particular time. Now we're going right on. The next particular temple that we're going to deal with is the temple called Hemmitt or Karnak. It is the largest temple in the world. It is a half a mile long. No, it is let's see, it is a mile long, half a mile wide. You understand what I'm saying? That means that would take up 2 or 3 blocks, maybe more than 2 or 3 blocks. A mile long and a half a mile wide. The complete 20 blocks. That's the complete layout of Dendera. Real key at this particular time. Now we're going to start off first to enter in this journey of Dendera, the largest school ever built in the world for a worship of the celestial gods. The largest temple ever in the world is the temple of Hemmitt or Karnak. Now we first start off with the colonnade again. And as I told you before, you have the winged disc. And right here, you will see real close ram-headed sphinx. Now let me get a picture of a ram-headed sphinx while I'm talking. Because it's very key, because this is going to later on symbolize a sacred marriage to another temple. This temple, these temples were like people. We're going to get into that in a few minutes. And they were married to each other. Now this is the temple. The first temple of Dendera that I told you was the temple of Amen-Ra. Remember that, right? No, excuse me. The first temple I showed you of Dendera was the temple of Hathor Heru. This particular temple is the temple of Amen-Ra. Now, at Karnak, or what you would call the temple of Hemmitt, which means the oldest university in the world. Now, very key. What you had here, you will see the colonnade. Now, when you see this particular colonnade, you're going to find out that you see ram-headed sphinx, and they would lead up to the temple. This is the first doorway. These ram-headed sphinx are also leading up to the colonnade. Then you would come in and you see the pharaohs, and they're having a grand procession going on, and these particular ram-headed sphinx that would lead up to the temple. This is a picture of the ram-headed sphinx. You already know what the lion-headed sphinx is. But this is the temple of the picture of the ram-headed sphinx. Now they would lead up to the front door of the temple. This was one up here with the head cut off. Now this is at Karnak. They would lead up to the front door of the temple. Now this is key because I'm going to show you the sacred marriage between the temples. Now that's the colonnade. The first thing we want to deal with, the reconstruction. Because Karnak is one of the worst ones in ruins now. And the reconstruction of Karnak is this. Iperasu. And what you see here, and I'm going to break this temple down, and I'm going to somehow try to show you each section, because the temple was too large to put in, to show the whole temple. I'm going to show you a grand layout of each section of the temple. This temple of Karnak, now this is when you first get into the inside of the courtyard. When you see these particular things here, they're called colonnades. You even had the one big colonnade is what you saw as Dendera, which made a whole temple. These particular things that they call colonnades. There's a building in Atlanta that now is built of these particular colonnades. I'm going to get into what is called civic architecture. We're going to show you what they're doing now in the new Atlanta. It's called Atlanta, Georgia. And they started building this civic architecture around the year of 1986. And now Atlanta is almost being completed as a Hemmitt. And I'll go into some things that's going on also there. Now, this is the grand entrance. This is the courtyard. Out front, you had these particular columns here that they had blocks on it, and they were not made, they were just made to stand up. They were not made to support anything. Now, this particular grand entrance that you call Karnak, once you went into the front courtyard, coming through the colonnades, first you come through the colonnades with the ram-headed sphinx, and you go down and you go into the front part of the actual building. Then you get inside this courtyard that you're seeing right here. Now, you getting good pictures of this? Great. You get inside of this courtyard. Then the next thing is you're going into another part of the building, which is on the inside, which is the hypostyle hall, which means halls of many columns. When you get into the other part of the building, you go into this particular part. And these are these great columns. And they are big. I mean, you can fit 10 people around each column, holding hands. That's how big these columns are. This is the hypostyle hall. And if you look real close, you can see the outside of which you just came in here. And you see the ones that's standing up on the outside, that's these. But this is the hypostyle hall. Hall of many columns is what it is called. This is the grand hypostyle hall of Karnak, which is the biggest hypostyle hall in the world. And it is an awesome structure. If you would actually see these things, the real pictures. But I'm interested in showing you reconstructions. Other people can show you, you can buy any books and see the other ones, that's no problem. But what I want to show you is reconstructions based on Napoleon's artists. When they went in, they drew the ruins. Then they drew the reconstructions of this particular hypostyle hall. Let me show you the ruins right quick, if I have some. Let me show you the ruins of Karnak, which is a body of ruins. Now you stick with me, because I'm going to show you some stuff that deals with the whiteboard tonight, and a whole temple that they tore down in Hemmitt because they didn't want you to see the inscriptions. Now, the inscriptions of this particular thing. Now this is the grand ruins of this particular part where you see the arrow standing on in the late 1800s, is the grand ruins of Karnak. You see, right here, you see this that's going on. Now, I want to show you some other things right now. Now, look at this. We showed you the hypostyle hall. The next part we're going to show you, we're going to break this thing down. I showed you the ram-head sphinx. Now, when I go to the temple of Luxor, I'm going to tell you about the lion-head sphinx. And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to tell you about that because it symbolizes a marriage between two temples. Now, this is the grand layout of the temple of Iperasu. You see the sphinx coming into the temple. Then you see one part of the temple. Now let's break this down. Let's go step by step. This part of the temple that you see right here, this is the grand layout. Right here. Huge. This is the hypostyle hall. When you see these dots, it's showing the actual layout of the hall of many columns. These are the columns that I first showed you standing on the outside. This is the inside wall. These are the two colonnades. These pictures, these dots are the sphinx. This is how it actually looks. These columns are standing up here. You see them right here. The hypostyle hall that I just showed you, you see them right here. Now, this is the first part that we're going to deal with. The first part, we're going to deal with certain sections. The first part, you see this doorway here. You see these colonnades, right?